Hi everyone, I'd like to take a moment to talk a little bit about the Black Lives Matter movement since the death of George Floyd. Um, so first of all, of course, what happened is terrible, is completely unacceptable. But I think that we have to recognize that the cop that killed George Floyd was not capable of controlling his desires. He was biologically conditioned to keep his knee on George Floyd's neck for all this time. He absolutely had to do it. That's just the way it is. And not understanding that can lead to more hatred against this man and any other people that didn't do anything to prevent that from happening. So it's very important to understand that. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't excuse what happened whatsoever, but that's just the way it is. Okay, it's something that we have to accept. It had to happen, unfortunately. So after what happened, George Floyd became some kind of martyr, and the Black Lives Matter movement started to become much bigger. So let's not pretend, though, that George Floyd was some kind of saint, okay, a hero or something. He had a criminal history, okay. You can see his record on the internet, mostly for drug offenses and some theft, even armed robbery, I think. Maybe he changed in the last decade or so. But I think that's very important to recognize that, because a lot of people don't necessarily realize who the man was at the time. At that time in his life. And, yeah. So, of course, again, like I said, what happened is still completely unacceptable. This is not a reason whatsoever. Also, maybe there's other things that we don't know of. Maybe he had some underlying conditions, or I don't know if he was under the effect of some drugs or something that may have made his death easier. I don't know. It's probably because of what the cop did to his neck. But anyway, I still think that we should question that. There's a tape. There's a full tape, because people haven't seen the whole tape. Okay, there's different videos out there that show parts of the full video, or there's one that shows a big part of it, but still not the whole thing. So I think that some things are still questionable. But still, the cop should have done that. That's pretty clear. So, okay, what happened after that is that a lot of people started to become very emotional, way too emotional, but this is predictable. Nothing surprising. And so while what happened is terrible, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's common to go that far in America for some cops. We don't know the statistics. Okay, so sure, I think that racism is worse in the United States than most countries. But it's still something that is questionable. I expect a lot of states to be much better than people expect. So what we are seeing right now is, and first of all, I definitely want to send my condolences to the family of George Floyd. No matter who he was, even years up to his death, I don't know. I don't pretend to know. But we still have to recognize that what happened is unacceptable. And I also want to say to people that for those of you that are rioting and using violence for whatever reasons, you are putting the shame in his memory. I don't think that he will have wanted a lot of things that I am seeing right now. So, what are we seeing? We are seeing a lot of things that are pretty radical. Though, of course, I still think that the majority of the Black Lives Matter is peaceful. Not only we are seeing violence, we are seeing some calling for defunding the police, even in some extreme cases, abolishing the police. Even just defunding to me is already way too radical. But it shouldn't be surprising how radical the left has become, and they don't even realize what they're doing. So I think that the Black Lives Matter movement is very divisive and highly politicized. So some people that are of good intention don't necessarily realize what is going on, and they think that they are what they're doing is so useful to reduce racism in America and the world. But I think that you should think twice, because what I'm looking at right now, I don't think that is going to solve much about racism in this country. Sure, it's not completely worthless, but it's so divisive, and also a certain amount of people in the movement. Again, I don't know the statistics, but are supremacists, and they don't want fairness. Okay, they're black supremacists. Simple as that. So hopefully, a lot of the violence and conflicts that I'm currently seeing will be greatly reduced soon. So we also started seeing a lot of vandalism, maybe even on both sides. Toppling of statues. Also, some countries, some governments decided to remove some statues, which is completely unacceptable to me. You simply don't respect the story. Okay? It's not because some of those people may or may not have been racists that it means that we should remove those statues. Okay? So what has been going on has led to all sorts of problems. One of them that is not necessarily too discussed in the media is that some cops, okay, this has already happened, I'm pretty sure, will start to be scared to make some, what you could say, reasonable discrimination against some black people. Or even other minorities in fear of passing for racists. And in some cases, those people are going to be criminals. So I think that's very important to make sure that, to take it seriously, make sure that if some people look suspicious, to not be afraid. And that's my message to the cops and people out there, also civilians. Don't be afraid. If some people are black and look suspicious or are a part of other minorities, don't be afraid to call them out. Don't be afraid, because you could prevent some crimes from happening. So this is important, to try to be reasonable. And right now, I'm pretty sure that there's still too much unreasonable discrimination against black people. But I think that some black people, and should recognize that the ratio of black criminals in the United States is clearly much higher than whites. So sometimes we have to take the risk of making a mistake. I think that black people and other minorities should cooperate with the cops, and sometimes you're going to be victims of maybe unreasonable discrimination to you from your perspective, but I think that sometimes it's definitely worth the risk. So it's not automatically racism to do that just because you're black. That's just the way it is. So you have to respect a degree of potential unreasonable discrimination. Yes. I hope that a lot of you cops won't be afraid to continue to try to even arrest some black people in some cases. Don't be scared. There's some situation where you have to look carefully to make sure that there's nothing too suspicious going on, because if you don't, you won't be able to prevent some crimes. I am not saying that I am against the existence of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think that it makes perfect sense that it exists, but that I think that it should be different. So I would like to see some reforms in the short term, and then I would like to see it disappear. So I hope that you are going to think about it. And start protesting as soon as possible. I really think that people should stop protesting. No, I don't think that this is useful enough, and I really don't like the current stance, the current situation. There's just way too many conflicts right now between the cops and protesters. And let's not forget that we are still in a pandemic right now, okay? So not only some people got the coronavirus because of those protests, it's still going on. You don't care, okay? It's dangerous, but when I look at those things, it's just as if there was no pandemic right now. Not only I wouldn't support what I'm looking at without a pandemic, imagine with it. It's time to reflect, sit back, and take a moment to seriously think about what is going on. And more importantly, you have to understand that it's impossible to choose our beliefs. Nobody chooses to be a racist or not. If you're a racist, try to choose to not be a racist. If you're not a racist, try to choose to be a racist. It's impossible. Racism is a flaw in the universe. It's not something that should be taken personally. And when you will understand that, a lot of conflicts will be reduced. You're already going to feel less hatred. So if you seriously want to reduce racism in the world, don't be a supremacist. Don't support unreasonable division. It's time to unite the human race. And this is how we're going to do it. But before it happens, we have to take a step back and try to understand that we are simply not the ones that we think that we are. And once we understand that, things will get much better in the world. Thank you.